Good evening. Thank you very much for joining the Enjoy Ginjyoshu Fair 2022 live streaming Ginjo, the Nihonshu that embraced innovation. This is in support of the Japan Ginjo Sake Association, which we are going to explain later on. So it is a pleasure to have all of you around the world today. My name's Aya Amelia Kodama, and I'm going to MC through this program today. And to introduce myself a bit, I am a Japanese actress, a TV person, and also a sake sommelier, kind of. I MC for TV programs and sake events on and offline, and occasional sake lecture. And I also do translations for sake brewery websites. So this is actually our first time streaming in English. So I feel really excited about it. It's so honorable to join you all. So since October 1st was the World Sake Day, please enjoy this program with some sake. Okay, so let's move on to the program now. We have two special guests for this program to get a profound insight into sake. Let's invite them in. We are firstly welcoming Mr. John Gauntner.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
As introduced,
evening.
my name is John Gauntner. I've been working in the sake world since '94. Believe it or not, I find that hard to believe myself. I do a lot of things in the sake world. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But even more importantly, I've been drinking the sake of the Nihon Ginjoshu Kyokai, the group that we're talking about tonight, for a long time, like about 30 years. So I'm really excited to be a part of an effort to support them in their ongoing activities to promote Ginjo and sake in general. So hope everybody has a good night, good evening tonight, enjoys the event, and I'll be talking to you throughout the rest of the evening.
Yes, thank you. And we have another guest, Mr. Keith Norum. Hello.
Oh, hi everybody. Amelia, thank you so much.
Good evening. Keith is working for Masumi overseas. So, hello, Keith.
From all that stuff. Yeah, I'm from Masumi. I've been here with Masumi for, oh my golly, almost over 15 years now.
Wow.
And I'm very happy to be with everybody tonight.
Okay, thank you. So without further ado, let's get started. So feel free to leave comments, everybody. Any questions are welcome. It doesn't have to be about Ginjo sake. We'll be answering to them later on. Okay, to celebrate the streaming, we're going to make a toast, the most exciting part. So does everybody have a glass?
I certainly do.
Okay, so John, what do you have with you today?
I'm drinking a sake called Tentaka, and it's from Tochigi Prefecture, which is about 2 hours north of Tokyo. And it's a very special sake for a number of reasons. It's a Daiginjo. It's actually a Junmai Daiginjo. And we've all heard about Ginjo. We're talking about the Ginjoshu Kyokai tonight, the Ginjo Association. And basically, Daiginjo is Ginjo to die for. You'll never forget that if you remember that. But in any event, it's also an organic sake. And organic sake are not very common in Japan at all. It's probably about 10 producers, and there's only about 3 or 4 that are really committed to it. And interestingly, to make a certified organic sake, you have to have certified organic rice, which is a huge hassle to grow. But at the same time, you then have to have an organically certified brewery and brew within that. So there's a lot of work that goes into it. But there's a lot of meaning to it. There's a lot of significance behind it. So very, very rare. We've got a Junmai Daiginjo that's also a certified organic sake. It's called Tentaka from Tochigi Prefecture.
Tentaka. And what kind of glass you have?
Oh, I've got, interestingly, it's called the Seishu glass, or it's a typical one that's used in the industry for tasting. Seishu is just the legal term for sake. So it's kind of a standard orthodox glass. But what's cool about it is it's what is used at very, very commonly at industry tasting. So it's cool. I also have a piece of pottery that I like that I'm going to sneak into when nobody's looking. And just in case I want to taste a bit more seriously, I've got a proper Kikijoko.
Huge one.
I didn't prepare all of this just to talk about it right now. But it's like, I can't choose. I got to have all 3, and I at least have to have this one. So I've got that, and I've got this wonderful piece too that we can talk about later if time permits.
Okay, thank you. And Keith, what do you have with you today?
You know, I can't talk about the sake until I get my clothes on. So could you just bear rest here, everybody? Just hang on a sec. Hang on, I'll be right back.
All right. It's amazing.
You're never fully dressed without a happy.
Look inside my sleeve. No. I can talk about sake, especially the sake that I'm going to be having a kampai with. If I don't get my
Yay!
Nancy. Ta-da!
Ta-da!
Why don't you do a 360 spin so we can see the beautiful back?
We want to see a back shot.
Masumi's happy. We call this a happy because, of course, you're having sake. Of course, you're going to be happy.
Of course.
And this is the Masumi Deluxe Happy. You look around. Take a look at that.
Whoa, amazing.
Yeah, beautiful.
Look at that.
Yeah.
It says Masumi. I look kind of like a Yakuza in this thing, but
be careful.
Yeah, now that I've got my happy on, we can get happy. Tonight I am going to be having a Masumi sake. This is a Jumai Ginjo, and I just love this thing. This is a seasonal item. This is called Hiya Oroshi, and it's basically the autumn seasonal sake. Just came out actually September 9th, 9/9, very auspicious day for anything to come out. So basically I'm going to be having this. Now, I should point out this is seasonal. There's two ways that things can be seasonal. We have a sake that comes out. It's the first sake of the new year, and that is not this. It's called Arabashiri, and that is of the season because it's the first sake. It comes from the new rice harvested that year, and it's the first really Jumai Ginjo that we make with that new rice. And so you can really feel the year's rice. Sometimes the rice is hard, sometimes it's soft, sometimes it melts, sometimes it doesn't. So that sake comes out of the season. Hiya Oroshi is not of the season, it's for the season. Because autumn is the best time for food. The fishes are full of oil and fat, the meats are fat, everything's great. So Hiya Oroshi is made during the winter into spring and is prepared for the autumn menu. So here we go. Yay, yay.
Yay, yay. What kind of cups do you have with you? Oh, sorry.
Oh, you were drinking, Amelia. Oh, come on.
The cup? Yeah, actually recognizes this. This is a Kaga. I got this in Kaga. My wife and I and our kids took a little trip up there during the summer when we were finally able to, with the pandemic, we were actually able to another prefecture. And this is kutaniyaki, a very famous type of ceramic from that area. And I've had my eye on this for a long time. So this is a lovely little sakazuki. And here we go.
That's beautiful. Okay, I have rihaku, two types of rihaku with me. This is kind of getting invisible, but rihaku. I'm going to try this one for a kanpai. This is like around polishing ratio, like 55%. What's special about rihaku is it's a brewery in Shimane Prefecture. It's kind of like the south of Japan. They have like 4 wells, and which is really amazing about the brewery. They brewed with this soft water, so it tends to be pretty mellow, and it has kind of like a mild aftertaste. What I like about it. So I'm going to try this one with this glass. This is the not here.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Like this ISO tasting glass, which we use to taste everything. Okay, so since we're ready with our sake, please hold your glass.
I didn't know you could show 2 sakes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know that.
Amelia, you're combining with both your sakes? Like one
No. No, I have to talk today. Okay.
Okay, I got to plug in. I'm going to be switching to this sometime during
the Sure.
This is the first one was a really seasonal thing. It's only around for a little while, but I wanted to have one that's around all year, and it's an old time Masumi classic label. The famous black label of Masumi. And I'm not going to drink the whole bottle, obviously.
You can though.
Yeah, it's all over Japan. It's all over the world. It's one of the things that really has made Masumi's name kind of well known in this era. So I thought I'd have some of that. It's a kind of dry and very beautiful, kind of aromatic but mildly aromatic type of ginjo. So it's a lovely Jumai ginjo.
Sounds great. I love that too. Whenever I go back to my hometown, since my hometown is in Sula, where you work. Yeah. Okay, so I think everybody's ready. Could you hold it in front of the camera maybe? So let's say kanpai which means cheers in Japanese. Okay, are we ready? So now thank you for joining us today. I hope you all could enjoy the program. Kanpai!
Kanpai!
I could drink forever.
That's good.
Okay, so do you have any food with you today, John?
I actually do not. I mean, I could go grab some, but I didn't prepare anything.
I
actually
focused on what I was going to talk about. So
okay.
Eating.
Keith has something.
Yeah, I'm going to take my camera for a little ride here. Here we go.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So this is, if I can figure out how to make this thing go. It's a little confusing. So here we go.
You got it, Keith.
That kind of gives you the picture anyway. I didn't have much time to get real food, but this is just the kind of thing that you can easily enjoy with sake. Just grab it out of the fridge.
Wow.
You have morokyu. You have some cucumbers, which I have some light miso, some white miso. So a little bit of cutie, a little bit of cucumbers, miso. Excellent. And then we have tomatoes. The thing with tomatoes, for me anyway, I just love how sake and tomatoes work together.
Go
ahead.
Does those miso and vegetables come from Suwa?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, actually, we're so lucky up here. We're in the highlands of Nagano, up in the area, and so the vegetables here are just fantastic. Local supermarkets, yeah, fantastic. Nagano-based supermarket, and all their stuff is fresh. The tomatoes, the cutie. Oh, and the miso. This is actually from one of our partner companies. The Miyasaka family started Matsumi in 1662. And then around about the turn of the 20th century, part of the family started a miso business. It's called Shinchuichi Miso. And there it is. And that's also, actually, it's from Marutaka. So it's made right here in Suwa.
Great.
I've had that miso. It's extremely good miso, I must admit.
Yeah, and lastly, this is the thing that I just love it because John always kind of wrinkles his nose at this thing. I've got some brie cheese, which Tsuri is a great discount. Nobody seems to know what the cheese is about, so they discount it when it's in perfect condition. Brie cheese and a little bit of gorgonzola, just to liven it up a little bit.
Great.
That's otsumami for me.
Okay, well, I have cheese with me too.
Oh, fantastic.
I'm not sure if you can see it.
Yeah,
These are all natural cheese. It's kind of blended with fresh cream, so it just melts whenever you put it in your mouth. And I love it with warm sake, especially like nurukan with cheese. That's my best pairing for me.
I actually didn't tell the truth. I do have something to eat. I just happened to buy it and forgot about it. But it's going to be in a 180-degree completely direction from you guys, and I did not plan this. It's shiokara.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically squid pickled in its own guts. It's full of umami, pretty salty, and it's my absolute favorite pairing with sake in the world. So, yeah, I'll be enjoying that. I actually probably will wait and just enjoy it a little bit later, but I do have that prepared. And although it's not available too much outside of Japan, and I think a lot of people within Japan will crinkle their nose at it, I'm an oyaji and I like that kind of stuff.
Were you able to eat them from the beginning, from your first try?
Not me, no.
John, I guess I was, but I didn't like it. You know, it's like eat it. Okay, I can eat it. Okay, you're done. But I get to the point where I really started to like it. Nah, that took a while.
Okay. So
the first time I had shiokara, I was able to eat it only because I had vowed to try everything once.
Oh, okay.
That was the only reason. And I couldn't speak any Japanese at the time. And the person who had foisted this thing on me didn't speak much English. And I said, what is this?
And somehow the term pickled squid guts didn't make it into you, right?
They were like, whoa. And they finally said, squid. Blender, squid in a blender.
Yeah, it is a squid, but
and I was like, oh God.
Squid in a blender. That doesn't sound too good, does it?
Okay. Keith, I got some question here. Can I ask you? What is the difference between hiya oroshi and akiagari? It's a good question.
It's a good question, and I'm only going to give the answer that I know based on what I hear from, people around me. That's a question that some makers answer differently. So this is not the definitive answer, the one that I hear. It's only a difference in name. That basically you're talking about the same thing. You call it akiagari or hiyaroshi. Kind of depends on maybe where you're from or what tradition your maker it happens to be. But the story behind them is the same. Now that's what I heard. But
yeah, me too.
I think it's important for people that ask, well, all of us to remember that neither one of those terms are legally defined, right? So what that means is you can give whatever meaning you want to them. Now, no one's going to get weird about it, but the bottom line is you're going to get variation, right? Because there are no legal definitions between those terms. I think that's kind of an important thing to remember. You have to become comfortable with vagueness when you're dealing with sake.
That's true. Okay, so can we have, well, we already have two of you kind of speak about yourself, but can we have a bit more to introduce yourself a bit? So can I have John maybe for like...
Sure. And I've got until 10 o'clock to talk, right? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, you can,
so,
but...
a little longer of an introduction. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. And I got here August 1st, 1988 on a government program of teaching English called the JET program. And when I got over here, I couldn't speak the language. I didn't know anything, and I wasn't particularly interested in sake. I thought it's made from rice. It's all got to taste the same, right? But in any event, I did JET work, this English teaching program, for 2 years. And then I went back to my original discipline, which is electrical engineering. And I did that in a small company for 3 years. And along the way, I got way into sake. And all of a sudden, I didn't want to go back to the United States anymore. And I started messing around with sake and somehow making enough money to survive with odd jobs. And then I got more and more involved with the industry. And I started to write for the newspaper. I started to publish books. I got like half a dozen books out. I very slowly, actually through the Ginjoshu Kyokai, started to meet a lot of brewers and visit breweries. And eventually I got into export and things like that. And so now I've been here, this is my 34th year here.
Wow.
And I've been working with sake since 94, but full-time since 98. And I no matter how much I work with it, I never get bored. There's always more to learn. There's always more to taste. There's always more fun to be had. So that's a slightly longer version of who I am.
Wow. And by the way, we have this slide on YouTube. Your slide here on YouTube.
It's up there now?
It's up there now.
Oh, cool. So you can learn a bit more about me, about what I've published, and things like that.
Thank you very much. So now, Keith, could you introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. Once again, I'm Keith Norum. Where do I start? I guess I'll follow John's lead and start at the beginning of my sort of introduction to Japan and to sake generally. Although they didn't happen exactly the same time. I came to Japan not quite as long ago as John, but almost. I came to Japan in 1990 from California. I just kept going west, basically. No, I did have a reason. I had actually two reasons, and both of them were W's. So I had double W's that brought me to Japan. The most important W was a woman that I was married to from Japan, from Shizuoka. And I felt it was about time to turn the tables and start learning about her culture and language. At the time, also, it seemed a pretty good bet that a job could be found. Japan was Japan Inc. It was still the roaring 80s, and the bubble had not yet burst. So it seemed like a pretty good risk to just jump over the ditch from California to Japan and worry about work, which is the other W, when I got there. And when I got there, I got so lucky. And I have to tell you this. If it's a phone call or just sending a letter, do it. Don't worry about where it's going to go to, because you never know. I had known of a company that's based in Nagano while I was in California because they're a tech company. And I'd seen them around and I said, oh, what the hell? I'll just give them a call. And I knew no one there. The first person who answered the phone that could actually speak English had graduated from the same university 2 years before me. What do you know? And before I knew it, I had been asked to come up for an interview in Suwa in Nagano. And Suwa is right in almost the center of Nagano Prefecture, which is itself almost in the center of Honshu, almost in the middle of Japan. This beautiful highland lake basin. It's got a beautiful lake in the middle of it. And I go up to this interview and their headquarters is here. It's like, what? This is one of the biggest printer companies. Whoops, I said it. The wristwatches and printers, you know, that stuff they take off. They make you pay a little bit for the printer and a lot for the ink. One of those companies. Their headquarters is in this fantastic place. I fell in love. Luckily, they liked me well enough to say, why don't you stay on? So I ended up in Nagano and Suwa because of that. And this is where Sake and I kind of really started a good relationship, because I had a bad relationship with sake in California. The only sake I had was in a pretty rundown, cheap sushi joint in a mall, and it wasn't very good. So my impression was, sake, who cares? But Suwa has 9 sake makers in this one small area. And the first time we had a company, it was a big company party, you know. Everybody's drinking together, and out comes the sake. It's all local. And it was really good. It just turned my head right around. You're kidding me. What is this? So that really started me on the question of, wow, how is it that this could be so good and the stuff I had back there was so bad? Is it the same stuff or not? Very quickly, something else started me on the way to Masumi, and that was the Miyazaki family. Masumi was created by the Miyazaki family, again, 400 years ago. And the latest generation of them, in the 90s, who's the president now, but at the time he wasn't president. He was as understudy. His father was president. And as understudy, he was made to go to school in America so he could get some English. His father was very clever. He said, you're not going to learn any more about business by getting an MBA, but you'll probably learn English, and that's good. And so Naotaka heard a new American had arrived in Suwa, and before I knew it, I was at a barbecue party, and then my road to sake really had begun. So there you go.
Wow. And you're in Suwa right now.
Sorry? Oh, yeah, I never left Suwa. Obviously, I'm not working for Epson anymore. I stayed with them for 11 years, but then after that, I have a small business, and then moved directly to Masumi because they really started trying to export after the 2000s, like 2002, 3, 4. Things really heated up, and they needed more than just occasional help. So I joined them 2005 full-time as their educator, sort of marketing person, handling anything that's about overseas. And that's about it. After that, it's history.
Thank you. It's so interesting. Okay, I want to ask how you two met each other, since you two are like, you have like a whole episode. I want to hear that.
I could start from there because it'll call for some background. So, as Keith explained, Suwa's a city that is based around a lake that's in the center of Nagano Prefecture, which is pretty close to being in the center of the main island of Japan. If you drive up into the mountains from there, you go through a city called Chino and into a village called Tateshina. And my wife's family has had a house in Tateshina since the house is basically like Showa 3. It's 1920s. It's really, really, really old. It's been in my wife's family for 3 generations, huh? And so nobody goes there anymore but us, my wife and I and our kids. And really, the house is just, it's old and it's barely standing. But we love it. We love it. We love to go up there. And it's only, what, 30 minutes, Keith, from Suwa?
Yeah, 30 minutes from Suwa, from our brewery or from
Right.
Yeah.
And because of my involvement and work in the industry, I knew the Miyasaka family and I knew Masumi very well. And I'd been to the brewery several times and done a handful of work with them, promotional work, whatever, this and that. And Mr. Ima Aeto, the current president, is a very personable guy. So, I got to know him very well as well. And it's like, we got a house up in Tateshi. It's like, well, you got to swing by sometime. So we started to swing by a couple of times. And once they had a barbecue in the backyard. I think they do it with great regularity, but in any event.
Yeah, like every year.
What's that?
They do it every summer.
Yeah, probably like 8 times. And we're all invited once. It doesn't matter. The point is, I was at a barbecue in the backyard of the Miyasaka family, and Keith was there. And that's where I met Keith. And we started to yak. And at that time, Keith did not, as I recall, work for Masumi full-time yet.
Oh, yeah, that was before. That was before I started with Masumi.
So we slowly got to know each other. And then, before long, he was working full-time for Masumi, which means I got to see him a lot more at a gazillion industry events. So that's how we got to know each other. It started through the Miyasaka family, through Masumi, and it continued into a friendship that goes above and beyond that. So, Aratamete, kanpai, Keith.
Kanpai. Just fill the cup.
So, do you two work together right now, nowadays?
Only peripherally, right, Keith?
Yeah, I guess. Excuse me, I just inhaled my Roshi stuff.
Or akiagari.
We work together in the sense that John brings us, well, until the pandemic kind of shut the whole thing down. He does wonderful education programs, and he actually brings people at different levels of sake knowledge to Japan. And so we've been lucky enough to be able to host his professional level groups when they come to Japan many, many times. And so it's been a great boon to us. It's been a boon to everybody in the sake world, really.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah. What's cool about it is that, as Keith pointed out, I do these educational programs, and there's a basic and an advanced. And the advanced one, people are ready to see a lot more. And I don't allow people to get through the advanced program without seeing breweries. But we could take a bus out from Tokyo, and Masumi's got 2 breweries. One is fairly modern and in the mountains, and the other is down. And it's a 400-year-old brewery in the middle of Suwa City. And it's just amazing to be able to see 2 breweries in one trip run by the same family. And the equipment is different, but it's amazing. It really is, because we get to see so much technical stuff. And, you visit a lot of sake breweries, and some will say, we make the koji in this room, but you can't go in there. And Masumi's like, yep, go on in. They'll show you everything. And you get to taste like yeast starter, this and that, and see every step of the process going on at the same time. And then it gets even more interesting when Keith starts to talk about the water differences and things like that. So the point is, it is such a valuable experience to take people out to Masumi where they could see both breweries and have an explanation in native English. You can't beat it. And so as much as I am grateful, as much as Keith says he's happy we bring people out there, I'm just so grateful to have a place like there and a person like Keith to take it from there and just infuse all these people with tons of sake experience and knowledge. It's great. It is.
It is.
Again, kanpai.
Again, kanpai.
I love this pace. What is it?
Yeah, I'm pouring already 3 times already. I can't stop it.
I'm glad you said that, Amelia. I thought I was the only one.
Good to hear that. Well, I was wondering, what was your first sake? This is my original question. What was your first sake to taste in your whole life?
To whom are you asking that question?
What?
Who are you asking?
John and Keith. I want to ask you too.
There's only the 2 of us here. I meant which one?
Oh, sorry. Okay.
But actually, I can take that. I can give you probably a good answer. As I mentioned, I got here in August of '88, and it was still Showa. It was still Showa era.
The year I was born.
You were born in what?
Age 88.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What month were you born?
July.
So you've been in Japan like a month longer than me.
Okay.
But putting that aside, on January 1st, 1989, which was still Showa because it changed over like 3 days later or something like that. I was teaching in a high school in Yokohama, and I was invited by an English teacher there, but someone I really, really respected. Just an older gentleman, and not that much older, but older than me. But he was just serene and peaceful. I really, really respected the guy. But he also was a big sake fan. So I went over there for dinner on New Year's Day, and after dinner he brought out 5 big bottles of sake, and they were at the Oyama from Yamagata Prefecture, at the Mado no Ume from Saga, at the Tsukasa from Kochi, at the Meiken no. I'm spacing out on the one from Mie, and I'm spacing out on the last one too. But I got it written down. In any event, 5 very good breweries, 5 blue chip breweries, and it was the first time I ever had sake that wasn't hot, and it was the first time I ever had Ginjo sake. It was the first time I ever was able to compare sake. And I went back and forth between these 5 sake. And I was just like, this is unbelievable. This is like the most deep world, the most interesting world, the most nuanced world I've ever come across. And I was just completely blown away by it. That was my first experience. And then after that, and I couldn't speak Japanese very well. I still can't, but I couldn't speak it very well at all back then. And I would go searching for these breweries. I remember stopping in Tachinomiya in Tsurumi, Yokohama. And I'd ask for this particular sake. He's like, dude, you're in the wrong place. You don't serve sake like that here.
It's so amazing too. Like, imagine you by the Tachinomi bar.
What's that?
It's amazing to see you like drinking at the Tachinomi bar.
Well, I was just looking for the sake that I liked. And I did like that, dude, wrong place. But anyway, that was my first experience with it. And that slowly led me to go and try and find more, to find places to drink it and places to buy it. And it all started on, January 1st, 1989. And I need to remember those other 2 Megara, other 2 brand names, and I will in a minute.
Okay. So you liked it from the beginning? Oh,
well, I mean, up until then, I had had a lot of inexpensive hot sake, and I didn't dislike it, but I didn't think that it was a connoisseur beverage, right? It's like, stuff's hot, and that was about it. I didn't get, too worked up about it, and I certainly didn't think it was the deep, 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 fascinating world that it is. No clue. But that day changed everything. My life, actually.
Wow. It's amazing how you're like really curious of like studying new things. Like, you're really good because you went to search your own favorite sake yourself. That's so amazing.
I kind of had to do it.
John, was it hard to find them? I mean, you're talking about 80s, late 80s, 90s, right? Early 90s. It's not like back then you couldn't just, haul out a phone and,
No. But at the same time, I mean, like big department stores have 50, 100 good brands, right? And, these days you got a lot of maniac boutique brands, which is fun. But back then it was, like the blue chip brands, right? The Meimon Shukai brands, things like that, which were well known, very, very prestigious brands and very good. You'll never go wrong. So I could walk into any department store and there was 50 to choose from which I'd never go wrong, right?
Yeah.
And there's certain places I would go. Like, for example, back then, in Yurakucho, one of the 2 big department stores there had a room downstairs. It was just called Sakagura, and it was basically a sake specialist area. And there was one guy there, a gentleman. I would go there all the time, and he would patiently answer my questions. And I could go there forever and never drink through all the sake. Every time I buy a bottle or 2, go back. And then I would go back the next time and buy 2 different bottles, right? And this guy knew me well enough to say, if you like this, try this. This is good. You got to try this. And I was also meticulous about taking notes. I still am. You have to take notes. All right, you don't have to, but I do. In any event, the point is it helps me remember things. So I always take notes. I remember what I had, what I liked. And so there were places like that, Keith, where I could find plenty. Look, I'm one guy. You can't drink 8,000 in a week, right? So a couple a week. Back then, in '88, there are actually 2,500 active sake breweries. Now we're down to 1,400, right? So the point is, I would never run dry, no pun intended, of new sake to taste and things to learn. So I had plenty to access. So you're right. I didn't have the internet, thank God. And at the same time, there was so much for me to access. The other thing I did is I would find a couple of nomiya at a couple of places to drink. There's like one in Kanda that I used to go to, and one in Yokohama that I used to go to. And I'd sit at the counter and like, who is this guy? What's he after? But then you express some interest, and then they talk to you, and they start to teach you things, right? You're like, is that right? And you pull out the notebook and you write it down.
You always bring your notebook with
between nomiya that I liked and retailers that I trusted, there was so much to learn. Yeah. And on top of that, when I came to Japan, I never thought I would stay here a long time. 34 years later, famous last words. But the point was, I'm like, I'll study the language, but I'm not really going to need it because I'm going home in a year or two. But all of a sudden, it's like, wow, I want to learn more about sake. So I have to learn to understand this language. I have to learn to read the language just so I can learn more about sake. It was a weird motivation, but it was real. It was real. So it all kind of worked together. I didn't mean to dominate the conversation, but you got me off on something interesting. So.
It was really interesting. Keith, was your first sake Masumi or?
I'm going to start from my really first sake, which is that I did not know. I don't know the brand because it's the sake that I first had. Now it wasn't even in California. It was in West Virginia before California. I'm from California, but I grew up in West Virginia. It's a long story. I don't want to go into that. Because I was having a dinner with my brother. So I'm working in a small town in the mountains in Appalachia, and we decided to go Chinese. My brother did not live in that town, so partly it was an occasion because I rarely saw my brother at that time, and so he was in town. So let's go Chinese. And the evening goes on, and say, let's get some sake. Look, they have sake. All righty. So we ordered the sake, right? And it came out, I kid you not, it came out in a big carafe. It had a very clearly Chinese woman in a Chinese kind of picture on this carafe. And it had an umbrella on the top of it. It was like, there's not a Japanese cultural element in sight in this. Not a thing except sake on the menu, right? So it comes out and it's hot as hell. We couldn't even touch it. The carafe was absolutely burning hot. Oh, hey, look at that. Wow, look at that. They drink really hot beverage in China. And so we had it. And kind of like John said, it wasn't that it was bad or something. It was really hot, and it was alcohol, and we were into that, so it was okay. But to this day, I do not know the maker. I suppose it was a California-made item, but that was my introduction to sake. I moved to California and got some better sake, but I wasn't really looking for sake. There's a little more sake in California because they make it there. But I can't say that there was anything there that stuck in my memory as a maker or as a brand or something like that. It wasn't until I got to Japan that it started to dawn on me that half the effort, half of the road to getting to sake is to get hold of something that hasn't been damaged or treated poorly or served poorly, which has nothing at all to do with the sake at all. It has to do with how you encounter it. And who knows, I might have had the same sake there. It was really poorly handled, and I had it again in Japan, and it was like, wow, this is really good. I remember it was in Shizuoka, because that was the first place I ended up in Japan, and it was Kayun. It was just great. It was aromatic, it was light, it tripped across your tongue. It just like, I couldn't believe it was sake, to be honest. It was like, well, it isn't hot and it tastes really good, and I don't want to just do this or throw it in my beer. I actually want to sip it. I want to this thing. It was so much better than the raw fish I had because I was not yet used to raw fish. I was a mountain boy from Appalachia in a way. I was really having trouble getting used to squids and blenders.
Of course.
But the drink was nice. I liked that a lot. And then, I found employment in a different place, a different prefecture, and had no idea that I was moving to a place. And honestly, the Sua Lake Basin has a bunch of little towns in it. And like itself is, I don't know, maybe 60,000 people now, 60,000 or so. And there's a lot of little towns stuck together. So it's maybe 120,000 or so people in the area. So not a big place. And here's this place is 9 sake makers. All this, kind of pretty little island basin. So as I said, corporate kind of drinking parties, they always haul out the sake at some point in the evenings. Never usually have beer and stuff, but you end up with sake. And depending on who was holding the party, we would have sake from Okaya, across the lake, or Shimosua, or Kamisoa, or Chino. And it was darn good. It was different, even though it was all from the Sua area. Some of them were dry. Some of them, I started to notice that they were different in their character and appeal. And so that really got me. I don't have a single brand that opened my eyes. I remember Kayun because it was the first time in Japan that I had something that was just really memorable. I don't remember the first time I had Masumi. I only remember when the Miyasakas befriended me, my wife, and then it became much clearer what Masumi was compared to the other ones. And that didn't mean that I didn't like the other ones anymore at all. It just meant that I started to go in that direction. I have a feeling the young guy who's now the president was the Shacho, president of Masumi.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't just because he was friendly. He probably had other aims in mind.
As any good president would.
Exactly. I don't know if it was exactly a coincidence that you and I happened to meet at a Miyasaka barbecue and ended up in all kinds of sake debates.
Trouble. I want to hear those trouble too. About
what
those
trouble are you talking about, Amelia? The story to which I alluded earlier?
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, that one.
You set me up for that, are you? So there is one story, and I'm going to bust myself for this.
Yeah, please. We still have time.
So as I mentioned, we have a house in the mountains, and it's actually at about 1,200 meters in the mountains. Did you know that, Keith?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, when you think about it, when we drive there, it's like we just keep going up, but I don't pay too much attention. But it's like,
like
I've got this watch with an altimeter on it. It's like, you're now 200 meters. Like, and there's signs too, so it's actually quite high in the mountains. But Sua's in a basin, so you drive up, and the city is actually legally Chino, but you keep going up, and there's this village called Tateshina at the base of in the mountains. It's not at the peak of the mountains, but it's in the mountains. And as I mentioned, we've got a house up there that's been in my wife's family for 3 generations, and it's 1920s it was built. It's this beautiful old Japanese house, but it's anyway, it's old.
Okay.
And so there's these wooden shutter doors, amado, right?
Wow.
For all the things. And every time you go up there and leave, there's like 10 things you got to do. You got to shut the water off. You got to do this. You got to do that.
That story.
Oh my gosh.
And there's so many like amado. You got to shut all the amado because it's there's no people up there, but animals, bugs.
Yeah.
In any event, the main front door has a big wooden shutter, is what it is. It's called an amado in Japanese. And they don't come around and get the garbage up there. You've got to take it to a garbage pickup place. And that's another thing you got to do before you leave.
Is it kind of far from your house?
No, it's not. It's it's a 3-minute drive. You can walk, but you don't want to. But in any event, that's the last thing you do before you leave, right? And so for some reason, on one particular day, I don't know. I guess I thought I was going to come back. I'll take the garbage and come back, but I didn't. I took the garbage, dropped it off, I left. I'm thinking, I got this nagging insecurity that I left the amado open. I didn't shut the wooden door. I'm like, could I have done that? And no one's going to hurt it. But the thing is, you can't leave it open for 3, 4, 5 months when you don't know when you're going to go back. That ain't good. Not going to happen, especially in the fall, because then it's going to give you the winter and snow and all kinds of things. So Keith does business there. Keith knows that neighborhood very well. And he had never been to the house. So I said to him, Keith, can you swing by the house? It's right across from Manyodo kana?
There's also the Manyodo.
So there's do you know that place, Amelia?
Yeah, Manyodo. I know that.
So it's called Purumai. There's a big swimming pool there. There was. You know what I'm talking about? Oh, wow.
I can imagine. I've never been there, though.
Oh, okay. Well, the house is behind there on the side street.
Oh, wow.
So I told Keith how to get there. There's this old time cap. It doesn't matter. I told Keith how to get there. You just swing by and see if the Amado's open anytime, and then if you're just like, yeah. And so he swung by there, and the Amado was open. And he shut it for me. So I still owe him a beer. And now if there's anyone named Michael listening, I'm busted. But we'll just move on from there.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that last part, so because now you can't wiggle out of it, John.
No. It gets worse too, but I'm not going to go into it. But in any event, I'm actually pretty busted. But it's cool. Everything is okay.
That's amazing.
And I was supposed to go up there this trip, but I'm not going to make it. But I'll be back next month, and I'll go up there then.
Oh, next month.
And really, I go up there, and it's great. But the first thing is the house still standing, right? And then you go in and are there any rodents in the house? Like there's no bats. One night, I'm off on a tangent, and the problem is they can't edit this out later, but there's a bat flying around. So I caught it in a butterfly net, got it out. It came back in later, 3 a.m. I had to throw it out again. Yeah. I mean,
I even haven't experienced
not when you're sleeping in the same room. Anyway, it's a beautiful place. It's a very old house, but we love it. But it was made for the summer. It's not good for the winter. So anyway, thanks again, Keith.
Oh, no worries. And John said, it's just up the road. You just hang a left up there, and this road is, it's you're being kind by calling it a road.
Yeah, it's not well maintained.
It's narrow, rutted. And there's it goes up, and there's a really kind of a crinkly part. It's like, I hope I don't rip my car.
Yeah, I always put the car in the low gear. When I turn off the main, you're 1,200 feet anyway. It's basically straight up, right? And then you go farther up at a higher angle. It's like, no, put it in the low for the last 200 meters.
Because whenever I bring potato chips with me, it just gets so chubby, because it's so high up in the mountains,
Wow.
That
does happen.
You must have noticed that, John. For example, you buy some kind of, snack on the train. And the cool thing about our area, really about this whole area, is you can go from sea level in Tokyo, get on a train, Shinjuku, you got your, your snack, whatever it is, squid guts or potato chips. And in 2 hours, you're at 800 meters.
At least.
And the bag, of course, has got the air from the sea level.
Right.
It's like, wow, it's going to go. It's going to go.
Bum. Yeah.
Yeah, it's higher than Tokyo Skytree,
Yeah.
Well, I never thought about that. Wow.
Yeah, because it's 634, because it's Musashi in Japanese.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's talk about the Ginjoshu Association, since this program is about that. Can John explain what this association is about?
Yeah, I can. It's a group of brewers, and I believe there's 60 odd of them now, but there were as many as close to 90 at one point in time. And it's just a bunch of brewers that get together to promote Ginjo. We'll talk about Ginjo in a minute. But the Ginjoshu Kyokai, I'm not really sure how long it's been around, but at least 30 years, I think. And what's really interesting is once I got into sake, and once I started to write columns for the Japan Times, it's like, you can't make stuff up, right? You got to be proper about it, and you can't write the same thing more than once. So it's like, well, I better study this. So I got involved in the industry quite a bit. And there's a family, Kurihara, and the Kurihara family is a very well-known and prestigious distributor in the Tokyo area. But their main family shop is in Machida, very close to Machida, which is still in the Tokyo area. And they recently opened another retailer in Moto Azabu, and now they've got like 4 drinking places. But they're really, really, really kind people. And I've been hanging around for a long, long time. And I remember, again, we're talking 93 or 94. And I went to visit them one time and buy something at their place in Machida. And they said, there's this tasting. You should check this out. It was like, wow, 85 sake breweries all lined up. And so I went and checked it out. And really, it's an amazing, amazing group of brewers. You basically, at that time, there were like 85. Now I believe you have 60 some brewers that gather, and they've got a booth with like 6 sake. And you pay a ridiculously low amount of money, like, I don't know, 5,000 yen or something. And you're in, you could you basically have 2-3 hours to taste as much outstanding sake as you possibly can. And all the brewers are extremely enthusiastic. And so I checked it out the first time, and then for years I never missed it. They would run it twice a year. And I never missed it. It was like the highlight of my year. The Ginjoshu Kyokai in the fall and then in the spring. And as time went on, it moved around in various venues and stuff, but the quality was just always outstanding. The brewers that participate were always outstanding. And it is such an incredible opportunity to look at Ginjo, premium sake, from the entire country. And again, you're never going to work for 300 sake. It's not going to happen. So you need a strategy. And my strategy is always start with the ones you've never had, right?
Yeah.
And then do greetings to all the other brewers that you know. It doesn't matter. But now, if you haven't had a lot of sake, it doesn't matter where you start. You will never, ever be disappointed. And so I continued to go to that. Now, again, all things were going well until COVID came along. I put a kibosh on that. And now they're reviving it. What's really cool is the guys that are running it now are the sons of the guys who were running when I first started going. In other words, the generation's been passed on. So it's really, really cool. So it's an outstanding organization. The word selfless lends itself quite well. In other words, they're all marketing their stuff, but they're all really, really cooperating at a very high level to make premium sake, Ginjoshu, and the breweries themselves well known amongst the consuming public. So I can't recommend the event enough. You just got to get there. Eat a little bit of food before you go, but plan on going home slightly buzzed.
Thank you. And while your introduction, Keith was like showing his new sake. Is your karakuchi sake here?
Oh yeah, this is the old
another sake.
Keep on karakuchi. Don't be fooled, everybody. In fact, a lot of Japanese people, my wife included, didn't know. They saw keep on, it has the character, it means nama, raw, uncooked. And she thought it was nama, as in unpasteurized, which is a style of sake that's becoming more and more popular, but it means one that has not been pasteurized. Keep on has nothing at all to do with nama. It's pasteurized twice, just like most sakes are. But anyway, I karakuchi keep on, and that's what I'm having. I wanted to actually show you this. I'm having it in a carafe because I'm having it chilled. I'm having it chilled because it is the style of Junmai Ginjo that lends itself to chilling lately. However, it's great as a warm sake too. It has good range. And I kind of want to recommend people not to just take what people say about Ginjo at face value. Try it yourself. Sake and temperature is something that you really have to experience for yourself. On is great as a warm sake. It's also very nice chilled. And I have to boast this thing. My friends at Sake Passion, they gave me this thing. To warm sake, we use hot water in a little vessel, and then you put your carafe in there, and so on. You have hot water methods. But how do you keep it chilled on the table? They sent me this. It's an ice pack that's shaped like a wine bottle. And you can put whatever. It could be a carafe, could be a wine bottle. It's like a sleeve.
To keep it cold.
And it keeps it cold. So, John, do you have one of these?
I don't, but I drink too fast to need one.
You don't need any.
So kudos to Sake Passion Belgium for
that is cool.
Cool.
So that's
we have to talk about what Ginjoshu is. Ginjoshu, I mean Ginjo sake is, and what differs from the other type of sake. What's the characteristics like? How does it taste like, or how's it made of? Can John explain it for us?
I can do the technical aspect of it. Yeah. To me, I mean, there's a legal definition, and then there's a touchy feeling practical definition. But the legal definition is that in order to make something and put ginjo on the label, the rice that you use has to be milled down to remove at least the outer 40%, so that no more than 60% of the original size of the grain remains. Why do they do that? Because in all rice, but especially in proper sake rice, you've got the starch in the center and fat and protein around that. Fat and protein will give you rougher flavors. That's oversimplifying. And the starch in the center will give you a cleaner flavor. So you want to get rid of the fat and protein on the outside and leave only the starch behind. And milling techniques are very advanced these days. You can mill rice so that you take away the outside, remove the fat and protein, and leave only the starch behind. And again, it's a bit of an oversimplification to say that doing that always leads to better sake, or doing that leads to sake that everybody will like. It's not that simple. But as far as the grades are determined or defined, ginjo means the outer 40% at least was removed. And that'll give you a cleaner fermentation and a lighter sake. So it is considered to be premium sake. And it tends to be lighter, more elegant, often much more aromatic as well. But the thing is, what's important about this, as you look at the world of ginjo, and again, dai ginjo, which is ginjo to die for, is a subclass of ginjo. So very often it's lumped into that definition. So ginjo and including dai ginjo. Everybody says, well, you mill the rice down to 60%.
I'm going to interrupt. Dai is a simple Chinese character turned into Japanese kanji. It's just a picture of a person holding their arms and legs out to show big. All the other characters, ginjo, the same. You just tack a dai, which is a big, on front of it, and you get a big ginjo. So there you go.
Can you pose dai and go back? How we can see
step back about 10 feet.
Yeah, can you step back?
All we can see is your chest otherwise.
Yeah.
Go back in front of the Masumi mouse ears there.
Yeah. We want to see your dai.
Okay, here we go. Second, yeah, so this is, can't get my whole body out, but that's dai because it's a character that goes like this.
Yeah.
Like this. I can't see my legs, but my legs are stuck out too. That's dai. Big. Okay? Sorry, I just had to add that.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your cooperation.
Forgive me.
Thank you. So yeah, that's the difference between ginjo and dai ginjo.
Right. But as far as the sake brewing industry is concerned, they're basically, one is a subclass of the other. So they talk about Ginjoshu in general includes dai ginjo as well. But what I would like to say in a better answer to your question is that, the milling rate is one thing, but it just starts there. When you make ginjo as compared to other grades of sake, everything is different. In other words, from the time you mill the rice, then you wash the rice, you soak the rice, right? And you do that with much more attention to detail. In other words, you watch the second hand down to the second, how much time you soak it, how much time you wash it. And then when you sprinkle the mold on it, which is called koji mold, which grows and gives you enzymes, the chopped starch, and the sugar, so much more meticulous attention to detail, right? I mean, when they make koji, they might go on and check it every few hours, but ginjo, every 2 hours or so. 24 hours a day, every 2 hours for like 48 to 60 hours or something. Then every single step of the process, for example, fermentation at very tightly controlled temperatures, and then the way they press it, everything they do will be so much more meticulous. So ginjo, you mill it down to 60% or better. It's like, no, it's not that simple. Every single step
not that easy.
of the gazillion step process will be done with much more attention to detail. Yeah. And that's really what makes ginjo what it is. Fermenting at lower temperatures with much more anal attention to detail. Keith, how about how you guys make ginjo? How is that different from the futsushu or non-ginjo sake that Masumi would make?
It's a good question, John. And well, what you just described is exactly right. It's like a lot of things in the sake brewing process. It's like imagine a whole bunch of dominoes, like 1,000 dominoes. And once you click that first domino, the thing starts moving. And you can't stop. You cannot stop. You have to be on it the whole time, because once fermentation gets moving, that's it. It's the power of the natural world. And what you're doing is you're trying to help it nudge it toward a certain direction. You're trying to give it shape. You're trying to give it direction. But it's going to do what it's going to do. And you can feel the power of this process. As soon as you get it going, first time you make sake and you don't know much about it, you just kind of go, well, I'll figure it out. By the time you figure it out, it's done. It's finished. Whether it's or not, doesn't matter. So when you're working with ginjo, the very first step, obviously, is to get the brown rice and start to polish it down to that level. That's just the first step, but it's the big domino that starts things. As John said, every part of the process has to be handled more carefully because you're polished so much. The rice is, it's just little tiny pearls of rice, tiny little bits of rice that you're working with. When you soak it and wash it, if you're not super careful, if you over soak it, and it's very small, so it's easy to over soak. It's easy to let too much water get in. Then things go wrong. So the second step in a long, long process. And already, because it's ginjo level polishing, if you don't take extra care with that rice, you're going to go wrong. And then after that, and after that, and after that, it all just kind of compounds everything else as you go through.
John?
Yes.
Yeah, Keith, one thing that I think Masumi does that I rarely see is the use of edaoke. And I think that maybe you guys just do it for ginjo, or at least for premium sake. But to me, that's a good example of attention to detail. Can you talk about the use of edaoke?
I don't know what you're talking about. What's edaoke?
You serious?
I'm serious.
That's because it's so atarimae for you. It's so common for you guys. So in other words, you make the moto for 2 weeks, right? Instead of putting it most places, it's so common for Masumi to do this, and very few places do it, in my understanding. Yeah. Instead of moving the moto to a huge tank right away, right? For the first of the 3 editions, you guys move it to a smaller tank.
Right.
That's not so common, dude. Seriously.
Yeah, for other breweries.
Let me just answer the question now because I set you up properly.
This is perfect. This is a great example of what I run into all the time. The words that are describing processes are not the same for every maker. Collection of vocabularies, like specialty words or specialist words, and so I can go to a brewer at Yamagata, and half the time I have to go, what are you guys talking about?
What are you talking about? Right. Actually, I think I learned the word edaoke at Masumi, and I've never. Seriously, I could be wrong, but the point is, most places don't do that. But the point is, what it's all about is temperature control is everything in sake, right? And so when you take the yeast starter, which takes 2 weeks, it's at a colder temperature, and then you move it into a larger tank, at which point you'll double the size of the mash with more rice, water, and koji 3 times over 4 days. And most places just put it in a huge tank. And they just take it up the small part of the bottom of the tank. It's really hard to control temperature that way. At Masumi, and I was hoping you'd say, yeah, John, we do that for our ginjo, but not for our futsushu. But it doesn't matter now. The point is, it's something about the attention to detail that goes into premium sake, including ginjo, that Masumi does. They move it into a smaller tank. And it's a huge pain in the ass because it only stays there for like 2 days. And they got to move it all again into a larger tank. But the reason they do it is to more precisely control temperature.
You know what? You do that.
Which will control everything else. I was kind of on a Doksen tangent thing, but what did you say?
So did you call me?
It's so funny. So you do that.
Yeah.
So you guys got Soji Komu. I think that's the tank, but the point is,
It's just a way of
that's
calling.
attention to detail.
Yeah, exactly. And it is indeed. And actually, for a futsushu, we do a lot of soejikomi as well. So it's not necessarily a difference that we make between futsushu and ginjo. Our junmais, we also do soejikomi or eda oke. So that's
So here's how we bring this back to Ginjo. Masumi even makes her futsushu in Ginjo methods. But we're not trying to praise Masumi too much. The point is, it's little things that are.
Go ahead, praise us.
Attention. What's that, Keith?
Go ahead, praise us.
You guys don't need it. You've earned it. You've got it.
This is not supposed to be the Masumi program, you know.
You're right. It's right. Exactly. It's not a Masumi program. But the point is, it's little things like that that really make the difference between Ginjo or Ginjo brewing methods, which could be applied to futsushu, right?
Exactly.
And regular sake.
This is what one thing that I want to tell you about Masumi is Ginjo is a way of learning whether something works well or not. And if it works well, then Masumi tries to apply that to other styles, types of our product as well. And so Ginjo is kind of, in some ways, I think some clever person back then was thinking about just this thing. If we create a higher level sake, and if we work really hard to do that, then that's going to trickle down in a way to regular sake. It's going to make all sake taste better. They're going to drink it. They're going to want it. They're going to seek it out. So, and that's how it worked at Masumi. At first, the technique was reserved for Ginjo because you had to figure it out and feel really confident about it. And then the question was, can your company afford to scale that up to, for example, the standard level of futsushu or the junmai level instead of where your polishing isn't quite up to 60 and so on. Masumi over the years has constantly gone that direction. In our newer brewery, we invested in a system that would allow washing at the same scale as Ginjo washing. Washing and soaking in very small lots is very important for the Ginjo style because the rice, again, is so small. It soaks really quickly and you have to be super careful. And we ended up with a system that does that without having to use every single brewery worker by hand, putting a little bit of sake in a little bit of water and timing it. So now we use a system that allows us to make everything from futsushu, junmai, all the way to dai ginjo the same way in very small lots. So this is the kind of thing that John's talking about. In the end, it informs everything we make.
Well, it takes much more time and it tends to get much more expensive. But I often get questions like, is expensive sake the better? What do you think of that, John?
Not unequivocally. In other words, sake is a shikohin. It's a connoisseur beverage. So in other words, if you like it, you're done. Go home. There is no more to talk about. There is no better or worse if you like it. And because Ginjo tends to be the flagship that the one that gets the most attention, right? It's a total glam. Ginjoshu is the glam of the sake industry. And so everybody goes right there. Is it unequivocally better? Absolutely not. If you like it, it's good, right? So, I mean, again, this is dangerous wording, but the lower grades of sake can be outstanding if that's what you're looking for. In other words, there's a lot of sake now. I think a lot of brewers, and I'm sure Keith will agree, are moving back toward milling the rice barely, 90% seimai bui, only taking out the other 10%. And at first you're thinking, no. But it tastes like, okay, I see where you're going with this. So at the end of the day, if a sake is well made, it's going to be good. And if you like it, there's nothing more to discuss. So is more milling necessarily better? No, not unequivocally. Is Ginjo necessarily better? Not unequivocally. However, what's cool about Ginjo is the standards are there so that it is such a great sake for people to instantly like. Almost nobody's going to dislike sake in Ginjo edition, right?
I think so too.
Yeah, Ginjo's like, wow, I like this. I think I want to try 1,000 more of these. And when people try 1,000 more of them, they're going to find what they like. And that's what's great about Ginjo.
So really if we have to recommend one sake, I could recommend some Ginjo sake. Maybe.
Yeah, right. And the thing is, if people do pay attention, the people to whom you introduce it, they're like, wow, I like this. I'll try something else next time. And then you've created a monster in a very good sense of the word.
Great.
Yeah. And so another point that Keith made that I think is, I don't want it to escape people, is that the methods that they use for making ginjo, right, have trickled down to make all other sake much, much better. And that includes the methods. It also includes the yeasts, right? It includes the varieties of rice. Now you might get like really, really inexpensive sake made with much better rice than it was before. Furthermore, the milling process now, right? If you've got one really good milling machine in Japan, it's going to cost you a fortune to mill there, right? If you've got 1,000 of them, well, maybe not so much anymore. And so these methods developed for ginjo have trickled down into the lower grades, and so much more sake throughout the entire industry is much better because of the developments that Ginjoshu have contributed. Would you agree, Keith?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I should actually tell you this story. This is something that our current president's father often points out. He's 94 this year.
He's what?
94. And in the 70s and 60s, I mean, a lot of the makers were submitting products to the national competition, the appraisal. Most of that sake never saw the light of day, was never made into a product, was never sold to the public. It was made only for the competition. And then it was blended down into whatever else that you make, regular sake, table sake. And his hope was that someday that type of sake could actually be marketed and sold as it was for competition. Because he felt like, oh my, I mean, so many people are missing out on something so amazing. So this was like
so he was fast to notice that.
Sorry?
He was really good at noticing that.
He noticed that. He also, I mean, obviously, this was a time, 60s and 70s, Japan was really growing in sake consumption.
Okay.
And that's because Japan was growing as an economic power. And there were a lot of people out there working, salarymen going to work every day, women going to work every day, drinking. Mostly what they were drinking was sake. So the everyday sake out there was stuff that people had, all over the place. But as that process went through, I think the makers started to realize that the reason Japan was getting so good, getting so strong, had to do with a combination of very, very long traditions of careful attention to in so many areas, in so many crafts, in so many engineering and creative ways. And that sake needed to pay attention to that and also do the same thing. So the techniques that were made only for competition started to trickle into actually marketed products. In the 80s, finally, thanks to Dewa Sakura and some other great Ginjo style makers,
like Masumi?
Exactly. It started to become a product that regular people could buy and enjoy. And then you just, from there on, it actually transformed the whole
industry. That happened in the 80s.
Yeah, in the 80s.
Ginjo-shu.
Yeah.
By the 90s, the actual words Ginjo, Daiginjo became the basis for the new codification of sake in the tax law. 90s. Before that, it was just a word, and then they had to teach people what it meant. They had to sort of explain the whole thing the way we are doing tonight.
Yeah, that's an important point. I mean, until I believe 90, was it, Keith? I think it was 90, wasn't it?
It was 1992.
That it became completely, fully integrated legally. So before that, as Keith pointed out, the Ginjo definitions were what's the word? Industry mutually agreed upon set of rules, but they weren't legally binding. Legally binding.
It was just kind of a, a promotional idea or
That's
more
really
like Hiyoroshi. Let's all agree that Hiyoroshi is this kind of thing.
So. Right.
Yeah. That's true. Okay, can we start answering some questions now? We have some questions. Okay, there's a question. Ginjo sake, is it better cold or hot? What do you think about Dae-chan?
Okay, well, I did sort of cover this a bit earlier with this one. This is a ginjo. So it is a ginjo sake. It has won the Japan Warm Sake Award several times, gold medal, as a Junmai ginjo. So the answer is clearly some ginjo sakes do very well as a warm sake, but some do not. Some do not.
Like it used to be said that ginjo sake should be like drink cold, like around like 15 degrees Celsius, but it's not right now.
Well, I mean, in my being a Badinsky here, in my opinion, I mean, if you want to give people a sound bite, again, you want people to go out tonight and you want them to enjoy sake tonight, enough to come back and buy another bottle. And what I like to say is, drink your ginjo slightly chilled, but remember, there's going to be exceptions, right? And I think that holds true. In other words, ginjo tends to have delicateness and lightness and aromas that if you warm that, you're just going to bludgeon them right out of existence most of the time. But there's a lot of ginjo out there that's rich and full and with good acidity and good breadth and things like that.
Like that.
Not aromas that will be. Go ahead. What's that?
Hiyaoroshi.
And that's also included. Yeah, just
it's a Junmai ginjo by definition. It's a Junmai ginjo.
Yeah,
fabulous.
Good warmed.
Absolutely fabulous.
That's the point, is that a lot of it is just outstanding warm. So there's no hard rules like that.
No.
Right? The challenge with that is that people want, give me fast rules now. Give me 3 rules. I don't want any more talk. I can go out and I know everything about sacrifice. Not gonna happen, right? So I mean, what I like to say is, drink most of your most ginjo should be enjoyed slightly chilled, but remember there's going to be exceptions, delicious exceptions. And if you arm people with that information, they'll go out and they figure it out themselves. Myself, I like to start with stuff at room temperature first.
Me too.
Absolutely.
You're going to get the most information, right? Warts and all.
Right.
And most of the time, I don't know about you guys. Tell me what you guys think. Most of the time, most of my sake, I come back to room temperature. I'm like, this is the best. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, me too. Like I keep it in the refrigerator, but I take it out and leave them for like 15 or 20 minutes. And then like it's around like 12 or 13 degrees Celsius. And I think it's the best to check the condition of the sake.
Yeah, I agree. You're going to see the most information there, huh? How about you, Keith?
When you're talking about room temperature, 12 to 15, Amelia, you like it cold, don't you?
Well, yeah, maybe it's around like 16, 17, maybe, but I don't know.
Yeah, well, that was a joke, but basically what I wanted to say was the competitions, and John is a world famous sake adjudicator, a judge. He's an appraiser. And John, what's the temperature that people normally appraise sake at? If you're going to,
it's very specific. I believe it is close to 15 degrees, but maybe 17. But what's really interesting is when you go to high-level tastings like that, run by the government at national level and prefecture levels, they tell you this is the temperature of the sake right now, and this is the room temperature at which you're tasting. Because temperature is such an amazing thing. I mean, even with 1 or 2 degrees difference, the sake will be completely different, because the ability of our tongues to sense sweetness, acidity, at other breadth, depth, things like that, it changes so much with just 1 or 2 degrees in temperature. And so it's a really important aspect of it. And at proper tastings, what I mean by proper is government tastings, where they want you to have everything equal so you can assess each sake based on its merits, they'll tell you that. And again, we're talking about tasting sake at a high level, right? Meaning assessing it fairly. And the thing is, if you have one sake at different temperatures, it's going to taste different. And if you have food with it, it's going to be completely different, right? And so the point is to judge them fairly. What do? You got to take out all of the possible variables. And that's not the way we drink sake. But we can't sit there and judge, 300 sake with food, without food, at 10 degrees, at 5 degrees, at 50. We can't do that. So you do it at one temperature, and you leave the food factor out, and everybody knows it's not perfect, but this is going to be at least fair because everything's on the same playing field. So.
Can I add another? John gave a really good sense of the sort of the rule of thumb he mentioned before. Is you can't remember, all of these things, right? I have another one. It seems to work well for most people, especially if they're asking the question about that. It means that they're still sort of learning and not really confident in all of the things that they might have had so far. If the sake's character is very fruity and aromatic, the aromatic extremely fruity, some of them are really intense, like really bright fruit, then probably, I won't say it isn't, but I would say probably it's not a good candidate for warming. So if you're staring at a cup of sake that you actually have open and you're experiencing it, or you had it before, for example, and you're going to have it again, and you're wondering if you should warm it up this time just because it'd be interesting. If you don't mind taking the risk, I would say warm up everything for your own experience, but general, if it has pretty intense fruit, probably it's not going to be so good, and that seems to work for most people.
Yeah, I think that's a good line.
But it's not intense, and it's not really like oh wow, this is like you're getting the tropical fruit basket. If it's that intense, then you may try warm it up, and you might actually find that it's very nice warmed up.
To me, the challenge with all of this, though, is you can't really tell too much from the label, can you?
It's tough.
Yeah, it is. It is. There's a number of producers that will say they'll give you a recommended temperature range in Japan, right? But overseas, I think that a lot of producers or importers are trying to say, everybody hates hot sake, or nobody appreciates hot sake. So it's Ginjo, let's tell them they have to drink it cold. And so nobody tries to promote premium sake as a candidate for warming. Not so many people do. But the point is, most labels don't tell you what to do. So you pick up a bottle like, all right, well, what do I do with this, right?
Right.
The one answer is, unfortunately, open it, taste it, and then make your decision.
Yeah.
It's somewhat destructive tasting, but it has to happen. So
absolutely true. It does. So for the answer, it works both better cold or nor hot.
Yeah, I would say taste it first, but as Keith pointed out, really fruity stuff, you're not going to it's not going to benefit from warming.
Right.
Kana? How's that for an answer?
We can't tell. Well, it depends on which sake you're talking about.
Right. That's the challenge with sake, in my opinion, is everybody wants short, pithy answers. It's like, sorry, wrong world.
And I think this is a really good thing to remember, John, that it's not handled like wine is handled. It's not talked about the way wine is talked about. I think the wine world has a lot of sort of shoulds and should nots, a lot of very specific temperatures for certain types of wines. And that's fine. That's the way it's developed. But from that is sort of this unconscious expectation that, oh, well, sake must be like that. That there must be very specific and very, very finely graded rules for all of this stuff, just like they have in wine. But sake is not that kind of product. It's not that kind of drink.
Sake doesn't roll that way. Forget about it.
If you try to stick sake in that box, not going to stick.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen.
So you just have to kind of
to me, that's sake's appeal, right?
Out of you really have to take yourself out of the wine box.
So
to start enjoying.
But you can, people with wine experience tasting can really appreciate sake very quickly, I think. People that know how to taste wine, they're like, well, I don't know what to look for. You give them 10, 15 sake, they're done. There's nothing more to teach them. Go. You're done. But at the same time, if you're trying to teach people about sake overall versus wine overall, I think the basic This is a weird word, but consciousness is different, right? I think for any question about wine, there's going to be variable answers, be different opinions, but I think you'll get like 80% consensus, right? With sake, it's more like 51, 52. And then everybody is off on a tangent. Masakaya banyu. In other words, there's 10,000 ways to make sake. But to me, that's actually very representative of Japanese culture. I mean, it's vague. It's not clear. It's not going to be defined the way you want it to be defined. And that's the beauty of it. That's the appeal of it, I think. It's kind of cool, right? So, yeah, we got to deal with that. But that opens up to a whole world of really, really interesting cultural appeal, I think.
So if you're interested in tasting some Ginjo sake, we have the event on the 26th on October in Ikebukuro. And we can taste more than 42 brewers.
Yeah.
Wow. You can
and each will probably have about 5 sake, right?
Yeah.
So we're talking like 200 sake, folks. You ain't gonna get in through them all, but
oh my gosh.
Shot.
The tickets are running out, so please purchase them.
Wow, and, as soon as you can.
Yeah. And many people have already purchased tickets and some are about to sell out, so you've got to hurry. And if you're interested in purchasing these tickets, please register on our website, on the Ginjoshu Association website, or on Line apps. Yeah, they have the Line account maybe. Yes, so we're running out of time.
Holy mackerel, I thought we had another 30 minutes.
That's amazing. It was so fun. So I have a couple announcements. We have this shop called the Mercari shops. And so it's just for a limited time, the official store of Japan Ginjo Sake Association, the Ginjoshu Kyokai, is now open at the Mercari shops. So here you can buy fresh and well-preserved sake directly from the brewery. And though its delivery and shipping must be within Japan, so sorry about that, but we offer free shipping for the first 1,000 customers. So please take this opportunity to try a wide variety of Ginjo sake. Yeah, and so please check the description below the YouTube for the website link to the store. And for the second announcement, our next live streaming will be on air tomorrow on the 12th Japan time. So we're going to stream with the brewer of Tenzan Brewery, Shichida-san. You two know? Yeah, Shichida-san. Yeah, and Tanaka-san from Rihaku Brewery. Here. Yeah, they will be appearing with the VTubers, Run the Abyss, Kotori Yuri, and Fuyu Sanagi-san, to deliver the world's first live streaming of a collaboration between 3D and 2D. Wow. I can't imagine what'll happen, but that sounds exciting. But all three VTubers are like really sake lovers, and well, we can't wait to see how they'll interact with Mr. Shichida and Mr. Tanaka. Yes, so well, you two know them, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
What kind of personality are they?
Oh, they're both very interesting people. They're both also very technically oriented. They're very involved in the brewing processes themselves, and they're also several years apart. But I think there's a very healthy sense of competition between them. So it should probably be pretty interesting.
Yeah, between 3D and 2D.
I guess I don't. I'm not quite sure what that means, but yes, I think you're right about that, Amelia.
So I do want to add to what John said, which is absolutely right. Both of these gentlemen are also really approachable, and they have great sense.
Yeah.
They too are like
because they're techno nuts doesn't mean that they're not a lot of fun.
They're both a lot of fun. Yeah.
Great
techno nuts. So they too are really a fun brewery.
Yeah, they are. They're both great breweries.
Yeah,
and both of them make outstanding
really
sake. They really do.
Yeah. And so they are collaborating with the VTubers, V-Livers on air. Yeah. And the final announcement is we're holding a small survey below the stream. It won't take much time, so please send comments to us, and also please subscribe to our channel and follow us on our social medias. Okay, that's it for today, and it's time.
It went all too fast. Everybody, thank you for listening.
Yeah, it was so enjoyable.
And we all hope you can make it to the event.
Okay.
And what's the date again, Amelia?
26th on October.
October 26th. So try and get there. You will not regret it. We all promise.
Okay. So, John, are you going?
Unfortunately, I'll be out of the country. You shouldn't ask that question.
Okay, sorry. I should have checked.
I'll be out of the country. I gotta miss it, which really, really pains me. But it's gotta be there.
Okay. Thank you.
But Keith will be there, right, Keith?
Oh, really?
Actually, I won't be there. Kazuhiko, the president's son, will be there, and Masumi will be there. And
that's even better. He's much more interesting than Keith, to be honest with you.
Well, we'll see you whenever, like online, maybe on air.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, it was. I'm so amazed how the time ran so fast.
Well, thank you so much, Mila. Thanks to you, we went overtime, and we also kept it all together. So thanks so much.
Really, you put it together.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John, and thank you, Keith, and of course, thank you all for people who were watching the streaming. And thank you again, and we'll see you in our next live streaming. Would you give a kanpai?
Yeah, let's do that again.
Should we give a kanpai? The final kanpai. Okay, so everyone, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in our next live streaming. See you again soon. Bye. Kanpai.
Kanpai.